Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Chimichurri chicken burgers. That's right, we fixed the chicken burger. And all it really took was stirring in a couple spoons of chimichurri sauce, which turned this usually kind of dry, sort of boring, not very exciting patty into one of the best burgers I've ever had. And yes, that includes the ones made with beef. So I am very excited to be sharing this exciting new chicken burger discovery with you. And to get started, the first thing we'll do is whip up some chimichurri sauce. And by whip up, it's more like chop up. Since what we'll do to begin is take some Italian parsley, some cilantro, and some fresh oregano, and we'll place that on a cutting board, and we will start chopping it nice and fine. And while this part of the recipe is virtually identical to the chimichurri sauce we already posted, here we're going to do everything by hand and not use any blender or food processor, since we're making a relatively small amount. But anyway, what we'll do when our herbs are chopped almost, but not quite fine, is stop and toss in some sliced garlic, and then we will continue chopping until this mixture is as fine as we want. And what we're looking for is a texture something close to this. And once we do get to that point, we can transfer it into a bowl. And if we were doing this to top a steak, we might chop things a little bit coarser. But for these burgers, I think finer is better. And then to this, we will add some olive oil. Okay, something on the mild side would be nice. And if your olive oil isn't mild, you can always cut it with a little bit of vegetable oil. And then we'll also add a couple tablespoons of white wine vinegar, followed by our seasonings, which will include some kosher salt, some freshly ground black pepper, a little pinch of cumin, and then last but not least, a little bit of red chili flakes, since we gave cayenne the day off, although that would work too. And that's it. We'll give this a quick mix until everything's nicely combined, at which point we'll transfer this into the fridge until we need to use it, which, by the way, is going to be in two different things. Okay, we're going to use some to season our chicken burgers, and then we'll also use some to mix into some mayo to use as a spread on our buns. And once that is set, we can move on to prep our chicken. And what we have here is about 1.5 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken thighs, which is really what you need to use here. But very important, before we start chopping this up, we want to partially freeze it first. So what we'll do is transfer that into the freezer for about 30 minutes or so, until, like I said, it's very firm and partially frozen. And once it is, we'll pull it out, and we'll transfer it onto a cutting board. And what we'll do is take our largest, sharpest knife, or something like this Chinese cleaver, which works very well, and we will start chopping this up using the old divide and conquer technique. So I usually slice and chop one way, and then we can turn the meat with our tongs and slice and chop the other way. And once we have those thighs broken down into smaller pieces, we can start chopping, hacking, and whacking until we have something that resembles coarsely ground meat. And we don't need to go super fine, but we do want it fine enough to hold together in patties. And really, anything close to what you see me doing here is going to work beautifully. And that's it. Once we decide our meat is exactly how we want, we will transfer that into a bowl, and we will grab our previously prepared chimichurri sauce, and we will add in exactly 1/4 cup. And like I said, we'll reserve the rest for later. And then we will also add some salt, with the standard rule of thumb being 1 teaspoon of kosher salt per pound of meat, which is why I added 1.5 teaspoons. And that's it. We'll take a fork, and we will carefully mix all that in. And I do like to use a fork here, instead of something like a big spoon or spatula or our hands, since I think it gives us much less of a chance of overmixing the meat, which can possibly maybe make our burgers tough. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a thorough forking until I'm 100% confident everything's been thoroughly mixed. And then once that's set, we will form these into 4 perfectly sized burgers. And of course, we will dampen our hands so they don't stick to the meat. And we'll use exactly 1/4 of the chicken for each portion. And we will form that into a nice patty, about 1/2 inch thick. Although, as usual, if you want to go a little thicker or a little thinner, so that your burger matches the size of your bun, that's always a great idea. But anyway, we'll go ahead and form our 4 burgers. And then if we had to, we could cook these right away, but I really prefer to wrap them up and chill them in the fridge for about 1/2 hour or longer, just so that meat's nice and cold when it hits the pan. And while we're waiting, we can go ahead and make the spread for our bread, which is nothing more than our reserved chimichurri sauce with some good old-fashioned mayonnaise mixed in. And yes, of course you can just put mayonnaise on the bun and then spoon this chimichurri sauce on as is. But personally, I do like to combine them. And if we have some left over, we can use that to spread on other sandwiches, since it is just one of those things that makes everything else more delicious. And once we've stirred that together, we will simply pop that in the fridge until we need it. And then what we'll do when we're ready to serve is go ahead and pull out our chicken burgers and then perform one optional but possibly brilliant step. Okay, what I like to do is sprinkle a little bit of plain breadcrumb over the top on both sides. And that's because we're not going to sear these chicken burgers on high heat like we might do with beef, so it's harder to form that nice crust. But if we sprinkle a little bit of breadcrumb on both sides, as these fry in the pan, I think it's going to produce a little nicer texture on the surface. So again, this is optional, and if you don't want to do it, don't, but I really do think it adds a little something. But either way, to cook these, I like to place a skillet over medium-high heat, in which we've drizzled a little bit of olive oil, and once we think that's hot, we'll place our burgers in, and then we'll cook these for approximately 5 minutes per side. And obviously, the time will depend on the size and shape of your patties, but I do like to take a wild guess, just so you have some idea. But anyway, I gave that first side about 5 minutes, at which point I flipped it over. Oh, and when you flip a burger over, don't press it. Otherwise, you're going to squeeze out juice. And that is a very bad habit I have, dating all the way back to my short order cook days, when we would do that so the burgers would cook faster. So just flip, but do not press. Oh, and if your pan seems to be getting a little too hot, you can always back that heat down more towards medium. All right, with a regular burger, we can go hot and fast, and it's okay if it's pink in the center. But with chicken burgers, we have to cook them all the way through, which means we have to go a little bit lower and slower. But anyway, the point is adjust your heat as you see fit. I mean, you are, after all, the David Blaine of adjusting your flame. And speaking of magic tricks, you might have noticed 2 of the patties have disappeared. But don't worry, they're just in the fridge, since I wanted to save them to see how they are the next day. And also, I might try to do them on the grill to see how that works out. But out of all the methods, pan frying is probably the easiest and fastest. And that's it. Once that second side is cooked long enough, we'll go ahead and pull those out of the pan and let those rest on a plate for about a minute, during which time we can dress our bun with our chimichurri mayo and any other fixings you decide to use. Okay, I went with a little bit of lettuce, some roasted peppers, and some sautéed red onions. And as usual, whenever I serve a burger in a video, I normally like to pair it with some nice potato chips, or in this case, a combo of potato and vegetable chips. And that's it. We'll place on our burger and top it with our beautifully dressed bun. And before I bite in for the official taste, let me go ahead and cut this in half so that you can see just how gorgeous this burger is. I mean, come on, look at that. That looks exactly like a chimichurri chicken burger. So sure, it looks amazing, but does it taste amazing? Well, as I said in the intro, it certainly does. Okay, that, my friends, is one of the most flavorful, most interesting burgers you will ever taste. All right, garlic and herbs are great on chicken, so it totally makes sense they'd be great in chicken. And do not be surprised as you're eating this that you completely forget it's made out of chicken. All right, there is nothing dry or boring about this, which can definitely be the case when you're dealing with chicken burgers. Oh, and I don't want to, but I have to address the obvious question of can you use chicken breast instead? Well, of course you can, but you definitely should not. Okay, I really do think we need that extra fat and flavor that the chicken thigh provides that the breast won't. All right, it might still taste okay, but it will definitely not be as rich and juicy. And if you have people in the family that only eat breast, just make these burgers in secret, and they will never know. But anyway, that's it. What we're calling chimichurri chicken burgers. Or as the cool kids will eventually call them, chimichurri chicken burgies. But no matter what you call them, if you're looking for an incredibly delicious, very interesting, totally unique burger alternative, then I really do hope you give these a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.